Okay, I have a question to start out this new year. If you were, say, a billionaire or a mega millionaire who owned major corporations that control everything from oil and agriculture to how Americans shop and what they drive, how we access health care, the devices we use, how we get information, the price of housing, food, and more, and you were using your massive wealth, not necessarily to make life easier or more affordable for ordinary Americans, but rather to just make more money, how would you handle the inevitable backlash when average Americans figure out they're getting played and paying higher tax rates than you while earning a fraction of what your CEOs and stockholders rake in, and also paying more for literally everything? How would you keep the anger at bay, forestall a storm the Bastille revolution? Well, one thing you could do is build high walls to live behind, hire private security, and travel around in an armored car. That might keep you safe from the teeming masses. Kind of isolating, though. Or you could get millions of average Americans to take your side, root for you, and even fight harder for you and your wealth than they do for themselves. Get them to make your priorities their priorities. Maybe even get them to fight other non-rich people, immigrants and minorities, and anybody but you and your fellow billionaires. Okay, well, how would you do that? Because that would be one hell of a magic trick. Back in the 1980s, Rush Limbaugh became a radio powerhouse by enthralling mainly white working-class men, truck drivers, cops, and other non-college educated blue-collar types who spent their workdays in their cars or other places where they could tune in to AM radio for hours. AM radio network saw the potential profit in this and syndicated his show to hundreds of rural and small-town AM radio stations to pump the Limbaugh show for hours a day. So Rush Hudson Limbaugh III of the prominent and affluent Limbaughs of Girardeau, Missouri, could lean into his golden microphone and tell his audience of ditto heads, as he called them, that real Americans like them were having their pockets picked by the welfare queens, the brown immigrants, and the feminazis. They were the ones making white working-class men's lives worse. Not the Reagan Revolution, which ended pensions, gutted unions, and slashed away at Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs. No. It's the poor who are the problem, not the rich. He was so good as a broadcaster, one of the best ever in the business, frankly. He even helped radicalize Clarence Thomas, according to a documentary by PBS Frontline.
He would listen to Rush Limbaugh as he was doing a long commute, and he would have court staff tape record it so he could listen to it when he was commuting.
Limbaugh, who ultimately became a billionaire, fit the 80s and 90s perfectly, the lifestyles of the rich and famous era, when Americans practically worshipped the financially successful, even making a star out of pretend billionaires like failed real estate developer Donald Trump, who was born rich and promptly squandered his fortune on failed real estate deals before he was bailed out by banks and Russia, allegedly. Rush spawned a slew of copycats: Glenn Beck, Michael Savage, Mark Levin, Neil Bortz, Sean Hannity, and more, each of whom had the same general message: poor's bad, affirmative action bad, brown immigrants bad, feminism definitely bad. But the wealthy and oil companies and big business, good.
Charles Koch and David Koch have been outspoken advocates of the free market for over 50 years.
This should send a chill down the spines of everyone out there who's watching Fox now, because if you dare to question, you might not have the money of the Koch brothers to defend yourself.
Rush was followed by Roger Ailes, who went to work for billionaire Rupert Murdoch, building Fox News, which took his same message that white American voters should focus on crime. No, not mass shootings, black crime, brown crime, sexual minorities, and make them uncomfortable, and illegal immigrants. That's the problem, not billionaires like, say, Rupert Murdoch or the Koch brothers. They deserve the tax cuts and deregulation. We promise it will all trickle down. But we got to get rid of the welfare, affirmative action, equal opportunity, DEI, CRT, ABCDEFG. That's the real threat. And as long as you keep focusing on that, we are good. In the modern era, billionaires branched out from bankrolling talk radio and cable news to funding right-wing online ventures like Breitbart News, initially bankrolled by the billionaire Mercer family. There's also conservative organizations and think tanks active on college campuses like Turning Point USA, the Federalist Society, the Young America Foundation, and Americans for Prosperity, which was the Koch money-fueled pro-corporate backbone of the Tea Party movement. as well as up-and-coming podcasters like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro, who offer a younger, slicker feel, but the same message. Poor's bad. Brown immigrants bad. Blacks, and especially Black history and affirmative action bad. DEI bad. Black Lives Matter bad. Feminism bad. Insurance companies, oil companies, drilling, and rich people good. And while hating on immigration is a core part of the right-wing media ecosystem, these right-wing outlets have found a form of immigration they do like. Namely, the migration of rich foreign nationals with inherited wealth into the U.S., where they can buy up tech companies, gobble up small businesses into giant conglomerates, and reduce competition and create monopolies, while building massive defense contractors that eat up taxpayer subsidies so their billionaire owners can buy up even more companies, lay off people, and traffic in stock buybacks. In the process, a small group of super wealthy families have gained breathtaking control over the courts, including the Supreme Court, thanks to Leonard Leo and the Heritage Foundation, and over politicians through the unlimited donations the Supreme Court cleared the way for in the Citizens United decision. They control what we eat, how we shop, and even how much we pay for housing, because the super rich own literally millions of acres of farmland and millions of units of housing through private equity firms, making them America's biggest landlords. They also increasingly control information, what Americans are allowed to know. Jeff Bezos doesn't just control a lot of what we buy via Amazon, he controls the Washington Post. Ditto the South African billionaire who owns the Los Angeles Times, who is even more aggressive about pushing a friendly, pro-rich point of view. And of course, there's Rupert Murdoch, the billionaire who controls probably the single most powerful disseminator of right-wing groupthink ever created, the aforementioned Fox News. This small group of families, the Mercers, the Kochs, the DeVosses, the Ulines, the Bradleys, the Wilks, and more, plus America's billionaires and mega corporations, own so much. And you've probably never even heard of most of them, which is kind of great for them. And then there are the tech entrepreneurs like Peter Thiel, the born rich immigrant from South Africa who invested in PayPal, got even richer, and went into private equity, where he employed a Yale graduate who wrote a book dissing Appalachians, who changed his name to J.D. Vance. Thiel also controls a company called Palantir that helps the government surveil you, so yay. And there's Vivek Ramaswamy, the first-generation American son of Indian parents who took Soros money to start his first company, but reps a party that hates liberal billionaire George Soros. Vivek recently lectured Americans about our culture of mediocrity, ranting that a culture that celebrates the prom queen over the math Olympiad champ or the jock over the valedictorian will not produce the best engineers, a culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World or Zach and Slater over Screech in Saved by the Bell or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. Which is weird, because the culture he described produced the internet and Facebook. The Winklevoss twins and Mark Zuckerberg created the app after Zuck dropped out of Harvard, having basically digitized Harvard's freshman Facebook so men could find dates easier. Ramaswamy, who graduated from Harvard, once had a failed company to supposedly cure Alzheimer's. Here he is selling it on CNBC.
I actually think the potential opportunity here is really tremendous for delivering value to patients.
Yeah, that company failed. Though somehow, Vivek and his mom made a lot of money by cashing out. And did Vivek try to replicate Steve Urkel along the way? Nah. Here's Vivek mimicking a key aspect of the American culture he finds so terribly mediocre on the campaign trail. Yeah, lose yourself indeed. He also did that act as a college student at Harvard long before running to be president of this supposedly mediocre nation. And then there's Vivek's partner in the pretend agency to cut government spending, Elon Musk, who controls the app formerly known as Twitter and used it along with $200 million to put Trump back in office. He's now gotten Trump to come out wholeheartedly for visas for lower paid foreign workers to replace Americans in Silicon Valley jobs because, because he's the richest man in the world and Trump needs the money. And what value has Elon created? He was born rich in South Africa, came to America after apartheid fell, and he and his brother got $3 million to invest in their tech company called Zip2. Ever heard of it? Yeah, me neither. Also, his brother says they were working illegally in the U.S. at the time, which Musk disputes.
In fact, when they did fund us, they realized that we were illegal immigrants.
Well, I mean,
Yes, we were.
I'd say it's a gray area.
Yeah, yes, we were. We were illegal immigrants.
It's a gray area. Yeah, okay. And while his superfans worship Elon like MAGAs worship Trump and used to worship Jesus, Elon didn't create Teslas or the technology behind them. Elon became the company's CEO. He invested in the company, became the CEO, and then he bought the company out, which was actually created by two American engineers from California, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, who probably grew up watching Saved by the Bell in the 90s. And those billionaires and multimillionaires of America who now control your government, mind the Bastille, now want to take away jobs from you and change the culture to benefit them even further. Unless, of course, the civil war inside MAGA world brings them down first. That's coming up.